last year I talked about creating drop-in programming where you drop in and people can, or guests can drop in, see something, and then leave. It was sort of the way to get people to not stick around for when we reopened back in July of 2020. This is just sort of a review as well as a what we did, and then I'll have sort of a results. And the idea is to leave the doors open. In our planetarium, we have enough space that people can kind of wander in, wander around the pit, and leave, as you can see in this lovely view picture. This idea of walk-in astronomy is working in observatories, although right now we can't have our observatory open because of COVID. So it kind of gives people a little more space to be able to do this. So the question that I had last year was, could this work in a planetarium? Yes, potentially. So it was just sort of give these people quick sky tours and kind of send them on their way. These are the 5 titles that we went with in the end, and I'm going to discuss them later, so I'm not going to read this slide. The signage example, so we had a sign that was up above our planetarium door that said all show times will be open at 45-minute time blocks. You walk in, and then you can leave at any time. And then the right-hand side is our actual schedule of how we ordered it. We did it from shows best for younger kids first, and then shows that are good for slightly older kids a little bit later in the day. All right, so shapes in the sky. If you've been to a previous eLIPS conference when we were live in person, I've talked about this program, which basically is you give people the sky and they make up whatever shapes they want. So this is a walk in, walk out, but people did sort of sit, spend a little time looking up at the sky, making up their own pictures. If they had questions, we were open to answering questions. And then sort of near the end, we would just sort of cycle in all the constellations at once, show them, you know, sunrise and the show. Planet Hopper is a planet show where you just kind of hop around, ask people what they want to see, show them, give them a few insights. If we landed on Mars, I would talk from Mars for like an hour, so it just happens. But I try to keep things, again, short and quick. So again, they pick a planet, it could be any planet, it could be a moon, it could be anything. We will go and visit and have fun. So Stories in the Stars is our program where we went around the world and we literally like flew around our world to different places and then shared stories. We had about 8 or so shows, stories that we talked about from different places in the world, and people can choose which ones they wanted to hear about. And so we gave them the choice, again, where they wanted to see. We also had what we call the Ask the Planetarian show, where the top 10 questions were on the board, and then people can ask them, and we would answer them using some really cool visuals as we went around. Let me go back one. So our last question was, what's that robot looking thing? And that's that Minolta star projector. So we use that as a bonus question, and we can show how that works. And then we had our live from the sun. So this is actual live from the sun. We had our observatory feed going directly down into the planetarium with Rich, our observatory person. Tim wasn't very active, but we still found things to point out about the sun as best we could. If it was cloudy, we would show a video of it, and Rich would still talk about filters and things that, you know, safe solar viewing. This is just sort of what it looked like from our planetarium view. And the results are in. So we did this for a whole summer. And the first summer coming back, so from July to about September, we were doing these walk-in programs. This is the breakdown by age. And that's sort of like the average total that we were getting. And you can see that purple, which is adults, that was a lot because, you know, the adults drag the kids around or the kids drag the adults around. It goes either way. And each show you can see sort of where those age ranges change depending on the show. But then we also decided to break things down by average stay. So one of our staff members took notes when they saw a group go in and when they saw them leave, just to kind of see if this was working or not working. And so we averaged out the times, and you can see by show what those changes were. And we had the doors open for 45 minutes. People stayed for between 14 to 30 minutes anyway. Some people stayed less, some people stayed longer. A lot of the time, especially with the Planet Show and the Stories in the Stars show, and even our Ask a Planetarian, the ones that are the longest stays, it was because they didn't want to just see one thing. They wanted to see one thing and another thing and another thing and another thing until you've seen them all. So it wasn't as quick as we'd hoped. So what happened and why we thought this would work. So we thought and hoped that this would be great for small audiences, COVID friendly. People can walk in, and it works well with our digital theater. So we just kind of pre-program things to make it random access and easy to kind of jump around. There weren't any time limits except for the 45-minute time block. People can stay or leave as they wanted. So again, we weren't trying to trap people. And then we had 15 minutes to clean headrests and armrests and all that between programs. Challenges, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but you can kind of see that you kind of had to know what you were talking about. Good improv. Training was a little tricky for some people because they wanted a script and we just wanted to be like, here's the world, figure it out. Teach them what we could. We also needed a person on the outside to be able to welcome the people before they came inside, which was, again, needing an extra person. We started not having as many people as budget cuts happened. We also need extra lighting. Again, there's no time limit, so people did stay. We didn't kick them out. People did notice things and they can tell when things were getting repeated. And once we started repeating, so it was like, oh, we're going to go back to Mars, then maybe someone who's already seen Mars would leave, but they wouldn't always. Sometimes they're like, oh, wait, well, we haven't seen this one and I really want to stay to see that one. We didn't use the star projector, usually just our digital system. The star projector was more of a, look, it's cool. We show you what the stars look like, but then we show you that we can do a lot more with our digital system. So it was, we didn't use it as often, but people still like to see it. We still brought it up between shows so people can see what it was. But yeah, they touched everything. They took off their masks because they were lazy or they, felt like they needed to breathe or they thought they were outside. So it was just a little bit of a tricky thing with COVID. So the actual attendance, people did sort of want to come sit and learn about space. So we did have limits of time or limits of people. So we were only allowing 25% capacity, which is 35 people in our planetarium at a time. And there was a point when we kept filling and we couldn't get people to do that whole turnover as quickly as we wanted. So people just sort of stayed. And then we thought it was going to be cool. We did it for an entire summer as the full first experiment. And I do kind of recommend these sort of quick, short programmings, but what we learned is that it doesn't quite work. So again, we tried it for the summer, but we did go back to traditional presentation where there was a start and an end time and shorten that time block. So it's still like a 30-minute time or 25-minute time. All the shows were live. We brought back Sesame Street, which the little kids love. But we still had fun despite all the challenges. And we did, as capacity limits increased, we kept filling and filling, and it didn't matter what show. We realized that people just wanted to see something. It didn't matter what show it was that they were seeing. So they would come to any show and every show if they could, because it is free with admission and they just felt that they were entitled to see a show. So that is the long and short of it.
So what strategies did you use to get people out, to get people moving?
Sometimes we did the, and now a sunrise thing. So for these sky related shows, sometimes we just like brought it to a sunrise. So for the shape show, if I felt like it was 15 minutes and it was time to cycle in, or there was already, we reached capacity, we need to, get people moving, I would show the constellations, bring it for a sunrise and be like, thank you all. I hope you guys come again for our next program, and then, cycle them out. For other ones like the planets, I just sort of landed back on Earth and said, and we're back. And then again, cycled back to a sunrise kind of a thing. So sometimes there was more of an abrupt end if we ran out of time, and sometimes if we needed to cycle in people, I would try to sort of create sort of a transition that, you know, every 15 or 20 minutes to get people in or out. But people did sort of sit and stay. So we blocked off some rows so they couldn't all sit and stay or sit in every seat or every row. So we did try to keep that spacing, but people stayed. So as much as we tried to think that it was going to be like in for 5 minutes and then out, it was more like in for 25 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. We had one like kid and his grandparent that was there almost every week. So he knew all of our stories by the time we were done with them. So if we forgot something, he would just throw it out for you. It was kind of fun. But yeah, it didn't feel like anyone wanted to avoid going to something that it felt too populated. There were some that did leave if it felt like it was, but we have a big theater that's 50 feet from one side to the other. So it did feel like there was space. And even when we blocked off certain rows and said like sit every other row, they would sit right in front of someone. And then some people were like, they're sitting right behind me, I'm going to move. And then other times they, you know, went with it. And they can choose where we wanted to go. And the presenter just had to have the knowledge. And if they don't have the knowledge, we just say, I don't know, but that's a great question. And then did the program suggest new programmer style in the program? So yeah, it was very different because we were very much like, here's a script, do the script. And then this was very much a, here's a script, but don't do it in the order you think you want to do it in. Because it was very audience driven. So it was like, you had to know the Sky show, you had to know this show, you had to know that thing. And so some people were really good at one or the other.
I did see one question that was pretty far up. Did you do any surveys from visitors?
Oh, surveys. So we didn't do any formal surveys. Our person who was keeping track of who was going in and out sometimes might have asked a question, but it wasn't a formal survey. We just let people in, and we just kind of took the, that was cool at the end or whatever. There was once in a while a kid was like, that was boring. And I was like, it's okay. It was your opinion. This other kid liked it. Yeah, we didn't have an official formal survey.